Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
You're not from New York City, you're from Rotherham. Yes, it's the warm-up episode 117. It's Brady and Tom, and yes, it's the Rotherham preview. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm not bad, mate. I had a lovely week off with the international break. Yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Did you do anything nice over the international break? Anything you want to share with the listeners?
I scored a goal for the Sunday League team, for my Sunday League team. We were top of the league briefly, and then we got absolutely battered yesterday on Sunday, so we are now mid-table.
Do you want to talk us through your goal? Describe it to us as heroically as you want.
Oh, it was I'd say a Luke Beckett classic from about 6 yards out. I tapped it in from a corner. The keeper made a save and it just came to my feet. Cultured finish, they'd say, probably.
That's good to hear. Off the mark. That's good to hear. Someone else who's going to be off the mark is Sarah Winterburn, editor of Football 365, Huddersfield Town fan, and making a debut on the warm-up today. Sarah, how are you doing?
I'm all good, yeah. First, but hopefully not the last.
No, certainly not the last. It's good to get you on. Been in the pipeline for a while. So, how are you doing? Excited? Ready to talk all things Huddersfield with us?
All ready to talk all things Huddersfield. I don't generally get to do this very much unless my brother comes around. So it's nice. I'm just imagining that you two are both my brother. He's a little bit older than you, but let's go with it anyway. Okay. So I start sort of punching you in the arm metaphorically, then it's just like sibling thing.
Okay, noted. No, good to hear. Well, before we get stuck into the Rotherham preview, it's time to check in with Huddersfield Town Women. So, as some of the listeners may have seen on Twitter, we have sponsored the Huddersfield Town women's captain, Beth Stanfield, for the season. And Beth, she's going to do us some little monthly check-ins, tell us how the team's going, how the results are going. And here's the first one. So they've played 4 games, and here's what Beth has to say about Huddersfield Town women's start to the season so far.
Hey, yeah, I think we started off well and then have dropped off a bit, obviously, with the last couple of results. But started off well on the opening day against Fylde. We did really well to come from behind to win that. And I think our performance was pretty good as well. And then we had our cup match against Middlesbrough at home. So that, again, we won that. I think 5-3 the score was. But that was really pleasing because we had a lot of new players either make their first starts or get their first minutes, essentially, for us in that game. So that was really good. And then we had a really tough week, to be honest. We had Stoke, Halifax midweek, and then Burnley this weekend. So obviously we didn't get any points from those games, which is a bit frustrating. The Stoke game, I don't think we were very good in the first half. Maybe first half an hour we really struggled. And we probably deserved to be behind at the break, but we had 2 big chances just before half time, and if we took those chances, then obviously we go into half time either 2-1 or level, and it's a completely different game. And then obviously we were trying to chase the game and get one back in the second half, and they've hit us on the break a couple of times again. So then we had Halifax on Thursday. Obviously a local derby, a night game. It was really tough game, but I think we defended really, really well, and we were, compared to Sunday, especially Sunday's performance, and we were really resolute. And obviously conceding the 95th minute, I think, was pretty much the last kick of the game was gutting, to be honest. It was really, we all felt really low after that, because that's the one game you kind of don't want to lose. But we had to pick ourselves up pretty quickly because we had Burnley on Sunday, and I thought for maybe 60-65 minutes we matched them really. We limited their chances. We we defended well again, and then last half an hour I think they scored 2 goals really quickly in the second half, one after another, and that just kind of killed us, to be honest. But yeah, again, it was frustrating because 5-1 it wasn't a 5-1 game, you know. I think obviously we conceded first and then immediately responded and scored a goal to make it 1-1, and then Burnley got a free kick, which I don't think was a free kick, and they've scored from that, and we've gone in at half-time 2-1 down, which was disappointing. But yeah, I think the first 20 minutes of the second half we looked pretty good. We were pressing them much higher up the pitch. We didn't have many clear-cut chances, but we were playing much higher up the pitch, and I think we had more control in the game. But yeah, like I said, they scored 2 goals pretty quickly, one after another, and that just kind of killed us. But we can't really dwell on it. It has been a tough week, but you know, we're looking forward to West Brom at the weekend. We're playing at the Hawthorns, so that should be a great experience for everyone. And yeah, we've just got to dust ourselves off and go again, because I think there's been some good stuff, good football being played, some good signs. It's just we need to just stick together and try and get some points on the board. So yeah. Mixed start, but yeah, we've just got to keep going and stick together.
Okay, cool. So we've heard from Beth. So, right, let's get stuck into the Rotherham game. So football is back, men's football anyway, after the international break, and Huddersfield come back to the league after a win, which is good against West Brom, one of our old favourites. Well, certainly for you, Tom, anyway, with Carlos.
Boom.
But this home match is a chance for the Terriers to leapfrog Rotherham and build some distance from the relegation zone. Yes, we're already talking about the relegation zone and building distance so early into the season. However, the Millers will be standing in their way, and they also won before the international break, a 2-1 win over Norwich. I saw all the Millers fans going into the stadium. I was going into Sheffield actually as well. So, yeah, bit of an interesting one. When we looked at the fixtures to start with, Tom, you know, we kind of earmarked this one as a home game, one that they should be winning. How are you feeling about Town now that obviously they got the win before the international break? We've had a little bit of time in between. How are you feeling about Town and this fixture?
I think I'm feeling pretty good. I think Cozzy said it on the main pod after the West Brom game about how I don't think I've watched a game and thought we've played bad, mate. There was some very bad spells in that Norwich game, but I think kind of the West Brom game was the payoff for every other performance so far this year. So I'm not actually feeling that bad. And Cozzy said, I think that's what he said. He was like, if you at the start of the season said, all right, I'll probably have 4 points at the end of this run of fixtures, you'd probably be saying, yeah, that's probably about right, fair enough. I'd take that. It's been a very hard run of fixtures, the last ones. But now this is the money makers, these kind of games coming up, aren't they? These are the teams that you're saying you have to beat if you don't want to be dragged into that relegation fight. So yeah, I'm feeling all right, Brady. I'm not nervous about it. It's too early to get nervous yet. So I'm looking forward to, especially after the performance against West Brom.
Good to hear. And Sarah, same question for you. Really, what have you kind of made Huddersfield's start to the season so far?
I think Tom's right. The only really disappointing performance was that one against Norwich, wasn't it? Everything else, there were bits to take out of it that were positive. If we come into it with the caveat that the caveats we all know about the size of the squad and the gaps there are, particularly up front. I think every performance barring that one against Norwich, there were positives to take from them. And it did, and it sounds like a cliche, but it did feel a bit like it was coming, didn't it? There was going to be a win coming. You didn't get that sort of feeling that we got stages last season where you couldn't see where the win was coming from and you couldn't see the silver lining to the cloud. But I think with this season, it sort of felt like it was coming. And I think, you know, that West Brom, the changes that Neil made before that West Brom game, they made sense, didn't they? They made every part of that 11 look better. The defence looked much better with an extra man in there. The midfield looked much better with an extra man in there. You know, a sort of really positive performance in there on debut, wasn't it, from Ben Wiles? And that just made that look better. That made Rodoni look better. So you're kind of thinking, if they can do that again, and there's no reason why they can't, it does seem ludicrous to be talking about 6 pointers in early September, but it does feel a bit like this is really big, because that, the difference between 4 points and 7 points feels massive at this point, doesn't it? Because you get those 3 points, you are straight away into that sort of lower mid-table position where once you're there, the job is to stay there, isn't it? And I think we'd all, as Town fans, take a season of 14th, 15th, 16th without getting involved in the rubbish at the bottom. And there's a chance of that if we can get a bit of momentum going, I think. And, Rotherham's away record is terrible. They haven't won away in the Championship since, I think it's November. You can look at that two ways, can't you? You can look at it as they're due one, or you can look at it, actually, this is the kind of game that Huddersfield really should win. And I think, like you said, this is the fixture where you looked at the start of the season and went, well, if we get to there sort of intact, then that's the game where you should be getting 3 points. And if you get 3 points against Rotherham, then why not at least a point against Stoke? And then you're building a bit of momentum, aren't you? So I do feel relatively positive, I think, after that West Brom game. It's just a shame that you've got that, the international break's always a bit like that, isn't it? If you lose the game before the international break, you're like, oh, thank God we get a rest, If you win it, you're kind of like, oh, I want to play next week. So, so you just hope that sort of feeling of the feeling of triumph and the momentum isn't lost during these 2 weeks, and that comes Saturday, that positivity is still there.
Yeah, and Sarah, I'd be keen to ask you actually, same with whenever we have a guest on. Obviously, Neil's he's back for this year after the miracle he did last season. How are you kind of feeling about that? Because I think it's interesting to see. Well, there's certainly a lot of pro and cons to it, and that's been communicated in the fan base. But what are your kind of thoughts on Neil?
I feel like with this set of circumstances, with this small squad, we've talked about, everybody knows, we're 2 or 3 injuries away from really, using kids, using players you don't want anywhere near the pitch really, and we've got gaps where there should be, obviously we all know about the striker gap. I think if you're going to be in that situation, and this season is a little bit of a holding season, isn't it, where it's kind of, we know there's not going to be any new players in. We know that there's no money to spend. So it's kind of hold what you have. I think in those circumstances, I wouldn't ask for anybody else, because he can squeeze blood out of a stone and all those things. What I worry about is how much forward planning there is. We don't want to be sitting there in May and going, right, so now what? You kind of want, I'm hoping that behind the scenes there are things going on to say what comes next. Because I think just asking an old man to do another year every year is not really a very good plan. You would hope that he's part of it and trying to identify, possible coaches, because, with this squad in this circumstance, great. But, I think going forward, there does need to be a plan.
Absolutely. Anyway, Tom, I don't know if you saw, but the metaphorical, the imaginary linesman, if you like, he's waved his flag to the corner. So that means one thing and one thing only. It's time for Tom's history corner. Tom, take us away.
Yes, it's quite an interesting, a brief history, I'd say, this between Rotherham. The first game, believe it or not, was as recent as 1952 that we played Rotherham. So not that far back, really, compared to what we've had in the last few weeks, Brady. We've only played them 60 times. Town pretty dominant here, won 30, drawn 18, and only lost the 12 games. And that first game in 1952 was a win as well. And it was Town, their first season in the second division since 1920. And Town won that game 1-0 at Leeds Road in front of over 30,000. And they only spent a season in the second division that year and got straight back promoted. Blooming heck, what a beautiful time that must have been, being a Town fan. Just get relegated and go straight back up. And then obviously the last game we played was 20. It wasn't even this year, Brady. It was 2022. It was on New Year's Eve, and we won 2-0. Jordan Rhodes and Dwayne Holmes it was, and Mark Fotheringham sensed some belief that Town were turning the tides there during that game. I remember he was getting very excited, and look how that turned out, poor Mark. And then digging through those results, Brady, there was a pretty epic game during Town's statistically worst ever season, where we drew 4-4 in the first round of the League Cup. A hat-trick from Duncan Shearer and a goal from Mark Barham got the draw. And then I think it used to be when they to be rounds in the cup, and in the second round, Town, I think, lost 3-1 away at Rotherham and got knocked out early on. Never been good in that cup, have we? And then played for both. Guess who's there? Guess who's on the list? The all-time favourite, Alan Lee. What a legend. My favourite player for Town, but he's a cult hero at Rotherham as well. In the early 2000s, he scored the winning goal against Brentford, which got Rotherham promoted to what is now the Championship. I've seen videos of that. It was pretty wild celebrations at the what did it used to be called, their ground? I can't remember. I was going to say Millmore, but I might be completely wrong there. So you might have to cut that, Brady. But it's a good old classic Alan Lee celebration there. Beautiful scenes. We had Ian Banks in the late 80s, Neil Haig in the late 60s and early 70s, covering both teams. And then more recently, I mean, you've got Lee Peltier, who's there now. Reg was there on loan a couple of years ago. Sean Morrison is there now, isn't he? Obviously, Ben Wiles is now with us. Can you think of any others? I think there's a few that are a lot more recent. I couldn't really find many from back in the day.
Yeah. Tom, I can't believe you forgot another well-loved person on this podcast, Scott High. Scott High was there, obviously.
Scotty High was there, wasn't he?
Yeah. And Danny Ward, obviously.
Yeah.
Warnock's favourite son. Sorry, did I steal yours there, Sarah?
No. Danny was the only one I could think of, but I do like how often Alan Lee must come up on this. That he's playing he must be a very regular appearer on this section of the podcast.
Oh yeah, don't worry about that. I mean, we did a cartoon about him last year, Sarah. So.
You should get him on, show him.
I will try one day. One day he will grace our presence.
I think he's within his sphere. I don't think Alan Lee's too big for this.
I don't know. I don't think I'd be able to speak to him. Me get starstruck.
Well, lovely stuff. Well, Tom, I'm pleased because when we got rid of the Alan Lee comic, I thought, how are you going to get Alan Lee in here? But you just find a way, and that's what
I'm always going to find a way to shoehorn Alan Lee in.
Good to hear. But Tom, speaking of Rotherham, let's talk about them. Is there anything you think Town fans should look out for in this one? Obviously, like you said, Ben Miles is facing his old club quite soon after joining from us. But anything that caught your eye? Because I know you like to have a little look at stuff. I
quite like the kind of the because they've brought in quite a few, haven't they, over the summer, and it's been for me, it looks like it could be quite a good mixture of experience and then a couple of exciting players. But it's it's Jordan Hugel being there makes me worried a bit because he's one of those that always seems to he always seems to play well against Town, and then he'll stick up and find a goal there as well. But it's players like that, isn't it, Brady, for me? I mean, Morrison, great centre-back. He's 32, but, I mean, look at Tom Lee still doing a job for us. So it's going to be a tough game. They've not really conceded many. I mean, they haven't kept a clean sheet yet, but I don't think, apart from the Cup, we lost 6-1 to Stoke, but obviously there's quite a lot of changes that night.
I was going to mention that one, but yeah. No, I'm reliably informed they're pretty good defensively, apart from apparently the left back is a bit susceptible. So that's where the danger is, apparently. I spoke to one of my boys who's a Rotherham fan today, just to make sure I actually knew something about Rotherham before I came on. And he tells me that Cohen Bramall gets caught out. So there's the left back is the weak spot. But apparently Jordan Hugel gets a little bit isolated up front away from home. Yeah. So, I think probably the three at the back should shackle him relatively easily. She says ridiculously because that clearly won't happen. But how bizarre is it, though, to see a player called Cafu play for Rotherham? That's just absolutely blows my mind. What's that about?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking Brazil shirt in Rotherham. That's the only time you'd like to see it. But yeah, no. That was fun. I mean, Sarah, you talked a little bit there about a week's, but do you think this is a good game to make it 2 wins in a row? Obviously, you already talked about their away form and how it's not the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great fixture to have. I think confidence-wise, they apparently don't play very well away from home. They're not as front foot as they are at home. So I think this is the kind of game that really we should be dominating. We should not, this shouldn't be a sort of backs to the wall stuff. This should be actually putting ourselves on that game. And, it's massive for them as well. They're in exactly the same situation as we are, aren't they, in terms of just trying to sort of pull away a little bit. So it could be quite cagey, I think, because there's going to be quite a lot of tension there, I think. But we should go into it as favourites, and, undoubtedly, just on the basis that, Rotherham's away form is so poor that, to not win away from home in almost a year, that's not by accident, is it? That's not a quirk. That's a mindset problem. That's a confidence problem. That's possibly the system not working when they're not on the front foot. But, like I said, as long as that international break hasn't broken that momentum a little bit, and, to get two on the bounce would be absolutely massive, I think, for Town. And I assume he's going to stick with the same team. I don't see any reason to change that. Clearly worked a lot better than the 4 at the back. We know there's a lot of individual mistakes in those first few games where it wasn't necessarily a problem with the system, but there were individual mistakes. And having that extra person at the back, I think, makes a big difference. Giving that extra layer of authority out, that little safety net as well. And obviously, we know last few years, a Town side with good wing backs can be pretty effective, can't it?
Definitely. Oh, you've got me feeling positive. That's good to hear. But Tom, who did you? You know what time it is. It's time for you to get on the blower. Who did you speak to for this week's fan phone in?
I caught up with Matt, and we had a good old chat about Rotherham ahead of Saturday, Brady.
Hiya, Matt. Thanks for joining us. Tell us about the positives that Rotherham can take from last season.
Last season, we were full of positives. Obviously, survivals was massive for us. 3 relegations in a row prior to that, from the Championship, obviously. To finally break that yo-yo was huge. It really was a weight off everybody's shoulders, for fans, players. The day we confirmed it against Middlesbrough, it felt this weight lift felt like the entire stadium. And that's obviously, I can only imagine the positive that's brings through the club when you finally achieve something from you've been trying to do for 6 years, whatever it was. I've been trying to do it was massive.
Who's your favourite Rotherham player and why?
I'll go for new signing Cafu. I'm signing from Forest in the summer. He'd not played for Forest for like a year, so he's taken a bit of time to get up to speed. But he's one of them players that's just got that X factor. He'll do something stunning, he'll score a stunning free kick or whatever, make an assist or whatever, and then 2 minutes later he'll do something really stupid, lose you the ball and get a booking or something like that. But he is good fun. He's good fun to watch. Good fun to have around, I think, in the squad. And he's got that quality. He's a quality above everybody else in the team. He has got, like I said, got that ability to pick a pass or just do something that nobody else on the team can even think of. So I think he has helped move us forward. The games he's played, he was suspended for one of them. Took out a second yellow, but he's a great player, I think.
Sounds like a good addition, that does, Matt. Talking of new additions, Matt Taylor, he's getting into his first full season as manager. What are your thoughts on him?
Matt Taylor's football is progressive. I think he's a step up from Paul One. I think it's a progression that the club have seen and trying to build upon. We obviously didn't want Paul One to leave at the time, but it feels like it may well have been a blessing in disguise. He talks the talk, Matt Taylor, he really does, and the football's moving forward. We other than the Stoke game, we lost 4-1. We've been in every single game. We've beaten Norwich, who are obviously one of the form teams in the division. It's really positive into what Matt Taylor's trying to do, and it seems to be working.
So, have any of the new summer signings improved this squad, in your opinion, and who is your favourite?
I would say Chris Tiahi, who came. It was a Wigan. I think it was from Slovan Liberec or something like that, for what was a club record fee at the time, about 500,000. Is just really cool on the ball. When you're under a bit of pressure, get him on the ball. It just calms everything down. He's got that quality. Really has got that quality on the ball that we've missed since Barlaser left in January. Very different player, but has similar qualities in terms of looking after the ball. So he's certainly one to watch out for.
And now the big question, what is your score prediction for this Saturday?
Our away record is horrific. 2 wins since away from home since Matt Taylor took over nearly a year ago. But these are games. But we against Sunderland, we were positive and we tried to target and put pressure on the other opposition. So hopefully we're doing the same again. And I will go. We're not going to keep a clean sheet, I don't think. So I will go probably 2-1 to the Millers.
Cheers, Matt. See you later, mate.
And there we go. Lovely chat with Matt.
Good to hear.
It's always good to hear from Matt.
Yeah.
It is.
Anyway, let's move on because it's time for Quada's question. Okay, so for this one, I was thinking we were struggling, Tom. We normally prep these in advance, but let's be honest, the international break had messed with us, and we were thinking, oh God, we do have to do a Rotherham preview. So
Yeah.
So Quada's question this week was: you could have one current Huddersfield Town player represent England. Who are you picking and why? So as always, I'm going to read some of the listeners' responses, and then I'm going to ask you two for your choice. So the first one was Cam Fry. He said, Lee Nichols, besides his recent mistakes, is an absolutely brilliant and reliable goalkeeper. He's commanding in the air, a good shot stopper, the whole package. Yeah, Nick Jenkinson. I just like this because it was short. He just said Danny Ward, didn't say why. Danny Ward. And Declan Rattigan says, back in the Prem, it should have been Jonathan Hogg. England were crying out for a holding midfielder to protect the defence, and he did that perfectly. Currently, it's got to be Nichols based on performances, although Hudlin would be fun to watch alongside Harry Kane. Do you remember that stuff, Tom, about the Hogg for England?
I do. Well, it was all because Calvin Phillips was mentioned, wasn't it, for Leeds when he was in the Championship. Everyone was really pushing that, and it's like, well, Hoggy's doing it in the Prem with ease. You did. I don't know. It was a weird one, wasn't it? It would have been hilarious, wouldn't it? Even if he'd have just got called up who was it? Was it Ricky Lambert that came off the bench against someone and scored? Even if I just did that against Moldova or something like that, it'd been brilliant, wouldn't it? But yeah, Hudlin's a great shout. I'd love to see that.
I also remember at the time people were saying, well, Tom Ince, because he was chatting. I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah. But Sarah, what about you? Do you have any, You're
taking the wind out of my sails there, because I was going to say Jonathan Hogg anyway, because I just think the amusement of being called up at his age from a really terrible Championship side. And also just because I personally have been on a hobby horse about Jordan Henderson getting called up. I would have liked Gareth Southgate just to get rid of Henderson, bring in Hogg, because that would teach him a lesson, wouldn't it? Just to prove that, the bottom half of the Championship is much better than the Saudi Arabian League. So sod you, mate. We're bringing in Jonathan Hogg. He'll definitely do a job.
To be fair, that midfield for England against Ukraine weren't the best. So
exactly, do a job in there, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
100%
it wasn't.
Effort.
Don't get me on a Southgate rant here. I'm here to talk about Town.
I've turned. I was always broadly pro Southgate, but these decisions this week are just utterly ludicrous. Yeah. So he can go for me, as long as they don't take Warnock.
Can you
imagine if they just brought him in on a short-term deal to take England to the Euros? It'd be amazing.
Just to get them to the Euros.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Matty Pearson comes in for Harry Maguire straight away.
Yeah. Does he still have a number for...
would get in then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Does he still have a number for Adrian Littlejohn? Who could he get in? It's a shame Paddy Kenny's Irish.
That'd be so good.
I want that to happen. If we manifest, as the kids say, maybe it'll happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so
you wouldn't need a midfield. It'd be great.
Yeah, exactly.
You need some midfield.
I'm just imagining him having a conversation with Harry Kane about how he's dropped him for Danny Ward because he offers more. Tom,
run the channels, Harry. You've got to run the channels.
Tom, who would you pick? Are you picking Hudlin then, or are you going for?
I don't know. Yeah, Hudlin for the comedy value. Just it'd be very Mike Bassett, wouldn't it? I mean, getting a call up for a lad who's been playing. Not even really. Has he made a championship start yet, Hudlin?
No.
So yeah, Hudlin.
Oh, fair. To be fair, it's a bit like when Sven called up Walcott when he was 16. Maybe. I said it earlier, but I would like to see Matty Pearson in there. I just think it'd be funny, like especially if it was alongside like John Stones, like a more modern defender, and you've just got Pearson
putting his head on everything.
Yeah. Exactly.
To be fair, Harry Maguire's made a very good career out of it. So
yeah, true.
Exactly. But yeah, no, I enjoyed that. We got a lot more out of that than I thought it would. So that's what maybe we should do these on the fly, Tom. That's what I'm.
Yeah, maybe.
Cool. Well, anyway, we'll compose ourselves because we're approaching half time here on the podcast. So if you're heading to the game this Saturday, you nip down to the concourse. You want a little tasty beverage, you can get there. But if you can't wait till Saturday, don't forget you can get 10% off all online orders with the code AHTTT10 at magicrockbrewing.com. And if you watch on YouTube, you'll see it on the little ticker at the bottom. So there you go. And Tom's waving the beers. So there we go.
2 drinks, Tom. Is that
It's an emergency.
You never know when you might spill.
Exactly.
That second one. Lovely stuff. Right. Okay, we're going to come back and we'll talk about Huddersfield very, very shortly. Okay, so we've changed it off during the break. We talked a little bit about Rotherham. Let's get stuck into Huddersfield. So ahead of this previous show, we did a poll on Twitter /X, whichever you want to call it, asking, are you happy with Huddersfield Town's summer transfer window? So a reminder of the ins. I would list all the outs, but there's about 30 of them. So the ins, Ben Wiles, Chris Maxwell, Delano Bergzorg, and Tom Edwards. So 9.73% were happy. 36.6% were not happy, and 52.3% were in between happy and not happy about the window. So what about yourself? How do you feel about the transfer window?
I think when you talk about the numbers about the outs, they're alarming, aren't they? But then when you look at the list, there's a lot of nobodies and unwanted. Is there a single name in there that you would think, oh, I wish they were in the team now? There's a massive amount. There's a massive list, but the names aren't great, aren't they? Dwayne Holmes might be doing quite well at Preston now, but we all know he's not massively consistent. So would he get in this team? I'm not sure. Obviously, the more worrying thing is that how much longer that list is than the names coming in. And obviously, you're talking about 4 players coming in. You're talking about a reserve keeper who's probably going to play minutes, if that. Edwards, obviously, as soon as the system was changed, out on his ear anyway. Very middling fullback at best. I think obviously we're sort of intrigued a little bit by the Bergzorg signing. That's a little bit of an element of excitement, isn't it? A bit of an unknown, and there's definitely something in him that can produce things out of nothing, which Huddersfield are massively lacking. Obviously, the interesting one is the Wiles one. It's not exactly mind blowing, is it? But it's kind of, it clearly works. He's clearly a good player. He's clearly a technical, fits in well into that midfield. I suppose what you're saying is there should have been 2 or 3 more, and I think everybody knows there should have been 2 or 3 more, particularly a striker, obviously. And there's going to be a case of sort of making do, isn't there? At least till January, and hopefully there'll be some money available at some point. But it isn't great, is it? We all know it's not great. The numbers are small, but also we haven't lost anybody that's, it could have been worse. We could have lost players. If somebody had come in and offered decent money for Radoni, or, as they could have done after a decent first season, and we'd have been looking at it and thinking, the club looking at it and thinking we've got to accept any kind of offer for any player. So I don't think we're massively worse off, but, we all know it could have been better.
Yeah, hard to disagree. Tom, I mean, your thoughts on the window, and obviously people have talked about free agents. Would you be looking to bring in any free agents, or like Sarah said, maybe wait till January?
Yeah, it's the depth for me there, and it's like looking at that bench on Saturday against West Brom, and you've only really got Nakayama on that bench that you'd kind of class as a seasoned pro, is it probably? Do you know what I mean? All the rest have seen pretty much out the academy. I mean, Edmonds Green's a funny one because he feels like he's been around long enough now where but I still don't put him in that kit, really, that I'd say he's a consistent championship starter. So that's the worrying thing. I think this 4 in is really good, and you're touching on the free agent market. I mean, I haven't looked this week, Brady, so I'm not sure who's still actually knocking about on there. But I feel like we have missed out on a few who we did mention a few weeks ago, didn't we? But if there are a couple of experienced, I think that's one thing that we're just lacking. Experience in the depth there. And if you can have, and I know he's apparently been training with us, but Junior Hoylett knocking about on the bench kind of thing, there's experience there. I'd rather bring him on in the last 10 minutes to protect a, do you know what I mean? If we're defending a 1-0 win and you want someone with that experience who you know is not going to come on and make a silly mistake, he's going to be sensible throughout. I'd rather have someone like that coming on for that last 10 minutes than, I mean, and I love the enthusiasm Harrott got. He came on and tried to score from one of the stupidest, tightest angles against West Brom I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, bloody heck, good confidence there, lad. But do you know what I mean? I want him to be coming on and doing that job where you're like, right, you've got to come on now and you've got to get up there, be annoying, win those fouls and stuff. And
take it to the corner.
Exactly. Not try to score from on the dead ball line, basically. So I think if there are a couple of free agents already that you'd class as experienced championship players, they've been about, they know what they're about, and I'd say if you can offer him a 1-year deal, get him in just as no one's getting. For me, your starting 11 is pretty much sorted now. We just need someone as backup, really.
I think the problem with this is obviously we don't know behind, every wage has got to be accounted for, hasn't it? That's the thing. So if you're looking at FFP, looking at those things, you might think, oh yeah, but just bring in Junior Hoylett because he's around. Yeah. But if you're saying, well, we've got to commit $2,000 a week to him, then that's something that possibly the club doesn't want to do. We don't know where the numbers are. Obviously, I think there was a bit of pantomime about that whole thing with the owner and Warnock and sort of blaming each other a little bit. And I think that was all a bit of games certainly from Warnock's point of view to make sure that the fans were on his side and not the club's. But I think I have to take it with a pinch of salt that he didn't realise that he couldn't bring in someone else, and he didn't understand that giving the new contracts would count an extra. But we've got to assume that giving a contract to a free agent may or may not be in their plans, in their budget at the moment. So we might find that nothing happens. I think there's a very high chance that we have what we have, and we carry on with that, and just cut our cloth, etc., and hope that things get better, and hope that. But it's all about the depth, like you say. That to still have Danny Ward as as your number one striker, and to not really have another option. That's for him to be so far ahead of everybody else is a little bit scary when you're trying to create a championship side. But like I said, if you want any man in charge of that situation, then it's Warnock, and I'm sure he's in the owner's ear all the time, trying to get something else over the line constantly. But I don't know. It's an easy one to look at and think we should have done more. But unless you're the one who's looking at the numbers, it's sort of a bit of dreamland, really, isn't it? To look at all these other players who've joined other championship clubs and say, oh, well, he scored for them, he could have been scoring for us, but we don't know the numbers, do we? So it's hard to judge from the outside.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, I'm kind of with you both in terms of the transfer window. I'm in between. I don't think who we brought in is actually bad. I think we just like you kind of touched on there, Sarah. We're just 2 or 3 short. I mean, in terms of free agents, I'm with you, Tom. I know people aren't exactly wild about Junior Hoylett, but if the budget was available, I think, I was chatting to a Reading fan and they were saying, he's good for half an hour and he can put a good cross in, still can whip a ball in. And I don't know, it's just, would you trust, although Pat Jones has looked exciting in cameos, would you trust someone who's a bit more experienced? I probably would.
I don't think we're in a position to be sniffy about Junior Hoylett, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
Somebody with that kind of experience, like you say, who knows played under enough good managers to know what to do in those situations. Are we pushing? Are we pushing? Are we holding? He's not, like you say, he's not some 21, 22-year-old kid who might, shrink like a rabbit in the headlights in that sort of situation.
Exactly.
So I think if the money allows, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer to bring in anybody like that. And I'm absolutely certain that Warnock's doing everything he can to sort of shove and push and put pressure on. And, that's what that whole performance was about the other week. That was all about, like, I'm going to make this very public so that we all know which direction we're looking in when things aren't going well. So, he's a master at this stuff, isn't it? It's all games. He'll be pushing and pushing behind the scenes, I'm sure of it.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, the only other, obviously the one everyone was talking about, Warnock himself included, all summer was a striker and we didn't bring anyone in. You don't want to be in a situation where you're looking at free agents, really. But, to be honest, the only one, I think you're not going to get a striker who's going to replace Danny Ward. However, you want someone to rotate, and obviously you don't want to impact Keane Harrett, because I think he has looked good. He's got a goal and assist to his name already this season, if you count the cup. So the only one I saw that was probably realistic was Chris Martin. Obviously, he was last at.
I was just going to say that as well, Brady.
Someone like that, I think, is. I wouldn't be against it on a year deal, because, like you say, to be honest, I know people went wild about Martin Waghorn, but I think that's the kind of striker we probably need for this season, someone to rotate and do.
Has anybody thought about asking Alan Lee? Or
oh, don't get me dreaming, Sarah.
Come on. You never move much anyway, so
Exactly. And you just
want him to stand there and be awkward. It's all good.
Yeah, fling a few elbows out, sorted.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think you're probably right though, Sarah. I'd be surprised if we do see anyone in, at least until January. But who knows? You can sign them at any time. Okay, we'll kind of come back to Rotherham then. Tom, are you kind of the opinion then that this is Town should really be winning this? I know we kind of touched on, but it's at home. I think this is a really good chance, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think the setup against West Brom was really good, but I think I'd be maybe potentially bringing back in Diarra into this mix. I think him running at that defence could be quite interesting, because looked a bit naive at times, but like in some of those games, he has worried defence when he's got hold of the ball, and he's won a lot of free kicks in kind of good positions and stuff. So, I'd probably pop him in again, maybe instead of Headley. And I really thought Nakayama looked really good when he came on for that last, was it about 20 minutes? Picked that ball up at the back, was so direct every time, didn't mess around with it. He played an absolutely beautiful ball. I think it was actually the ball for Keane Harrett, and his shot from the 180-degree angle or whatever it would be, something like that. So maybe give Nakayama his first start of the year, because I feel like he's offering a bit more in an attacking sense than possibly Ruffles or Kasumu, I guess, as a fullback, because very briefly last year we saw him, but did he score 2 goals in that first couple of games, something like that? I think it was.
Yeah,
he popped up with a header, yeah, and then that looped one against Millwall. So yeah, I think you've got to go for it. Like Sarah's touched on their record away, you've got to be. You can't give them a sniff that they've got a chance here today. You've got to be set. You've got to keep their mentality of, oh, we're not very good away, are we? Because they are due one.
I think that's key. I think it's to give them time to settle into thinking, oh, actually, these guys aren't that good, and also you don't want. Well, we've all been, you don't want the stadium to start muttering and losing interest here. So it's got to be. I think it's got to be going early and going strong and trying to get a bit of atmosphere going and to stop those kind of mumbles and grumbles before they start, because they the tide will soon switch, won't it? You know, because they're going to be noisy. You know, the away fans from Rotherham, it's going to be a good turnout for them. They're going to be noisy as hell. They've come back, like you said, they've come off a really good win against Norwich. You know, their tails are going to be up. So they needs to be sort of dampened straight away. You know, this is our patch, and we are the better side, and show that. I think that's the key, isn't it? And we, you know, for all the criticism about Warnock's style, we have looked more front foot this season. We have, you know, there was a bit of a needs must about the end of last season, wasn't there? Where it was a little bit like staying games, and then try and nick something. You know, try and really, you know, the classic sort of backs to the wall. Make yourselves tough to beat, and I think this season it has been a little bit more front foot, which has made us look a little bit vulnerable sometimes to the counter. But it's better to watch, isn't it, as well, and it's better to see. So I think, and it's exactly the kind of game where, like you say, you don't. Although I suspect it might get cagey. Cagey's not going to suit us in this situation because, like you said, Rotherham will get their tails up and start believing a little bit. Whereas I think if we go for it quite early doors, try and put that pressure on, try and get in their half, stay in their half, and, you know, treat them with respect, but also with the idea that, you know, we should go into this thinking we're going to win this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right, well, it's that time for match predictions then you two. So what we're thinking for this one, I'm going to go, I'm going to do a repeat of the New Year's Eve game. I think Town are going to win this 2-0. I think the momentum's going to, we're going to come out, we're going to start fast. And I think if we get the first goal, I think that's them done. Like, as you say, Sarah, that away record is bad, so the heads will drop your hope anyway. Who am I predicting to score? Rodoni, and I'm going to get Cian Harratt. I think he's going to score. Sarah, what about yourself? What's your match prediction for this one?
Well, I'm going to go 2-1. I'm struggling to see a clean sheet. So I'll go 2-1, and why not Danny Ward off early doors, and then Karoma off the bench for the second.
Oh yeah, I like that.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back. We're doing predictions.
Is the prize a pint of Magic Rock? Is that how it works?
It can be, yeah.
Two pints. One for.
Yeah, 2 pints.
Yeah, that's how it works. 2 cases, I think. If you want to, I'll give you the email afterwards. No, that'll be the price. Good to. Tom, what about you?
I mean, Sarah's kind of touching on the. They haven't. I don't think they've not scored in a game yet, have they? So it would be quite good to get a clean sheet here today. I'd put that down as well done, Town, if we kept a clean sheet, because although they've lost a few, they have scored in every game. And I'd absolutely love to keep a clean sheet. So I'm going to go 1-0 Town, and it's going to be one of those horrible Rotherham fans because Ben Wiles is going to score, and it's going to be 1-0 win for Town.
Is he going to celebrate, or?
Yeah, he'll go. He'll do the Adebayor.
Runs the length of the pitch, sliding on his knees towards the Rotherham fans. Tremendous.
Can you imagine? I think Tampas would love it, but yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I've seen the board. Again, that pesky imaginary board. It's been lifted up, so we're heading into extra time on this pod. So it means it's time for the mailbag. So we've got 2 questions this week, both from people who've actually been on the pod before. So we kind of touched on this, but I'll just ask you both quickly. Joe Scott asks, I think the answer to this is obvious, but are you happy with Hudlin and Harratt as backups? Sarah, what do you think?
I think we've covered it, haven't we? We'd all quite like to have somebody who's probably scored more than, you should be. I would like a striker who couldn't count their senior goals on one hand. I think that's the key here. Someone who had some sort of pedigree at some sort of level. I think one has talked about this week, hasn't he? That he wants to give them a chance, but what else can he say? Because that's what he's left with at the moment. So, him sort of keeping banging the drum of I wanted another striker wouldn't be good for them. So he's got to kind of put some faith in them. But I think, as Town fans, I think we would all like to be looking at the bench and thinking, oh, there's a goal in him when he comes on, or, if Danny Ward has a bad 5-6 games, there's somebody else to come in. I think at the moment the pressure on Ward is massive for a player who, 2 or 3 years ago we thought would barely finish half a season, and now we're kind of going, it's all on you, mate. And the backups are very green. So yes, we would. I think we would. I'd be surprised if anybody doesn't want another option in there.
Yeah, Tom. I mean, I'm guessing you don't disagree.
No, but I do.
He's going to go crazy and say, "No, fine, happy."
I do think there is a player in this Cian Harratt that is. I think the thing that just gets me really excited is that confidence he's got. He stepped up to the Championship and he's going out there. I know it when he took the shot, it was like, what are you doing, mate? But to take that shot in the first place, it's like, it's hilarious. He obviously saw their keeper just off the line a little bit, and it's like, why not? And the ball he plays to Redone for the goal, absolute beautiful, pin perfect onto the chest. So I still think, I mean, Rhodes in there. I mean, you had your other experienced striker, really, didn't you? That's kind of the weird thing about the situation. You had that other experienced striker, and it's kind of like you're touching on the likes of Chris Martin and stuff, Brady. It's like, yeah, but you had Jordan Rhodes there anyway. So I still think, yeah, we need that other option. But Cian Harratt, very excited for seeing him for the rest of this season. And I'm looking forward to Hudlin finally getting on for his first league appearance, just to see what it's for. And you know what I mean, last minute Hudlin coming on to just cause a bit of chaos up top.
Yeah, I can see that happening this weekend. Actually, I feel like Rotherham's the type of game. Yeah, he could come on. Yeah, no, touched on it. I'd forgotten about Rhodes. I mean, Warnock clearly never fancied him, but
yeah,
that's the. Strange.
It's really funny, that one, because all I remember through the preseason when I'm reading the articles, watching the videos, Jordan Rhodes, basically one of the fittest players in the squad. His running's brilliant. He's so much effort going in. It's like it just, yeah, bit of a weird one. But what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? But yeah, and also James asks, we have also touched on this. I didn't expect us to touch on these questions, so this should be fairly short. He says, is it too early to be describing Rotherham as a must-win game? I think one of you actually said that. But Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly. I said it's a bit early to be talking about 6-pointers, but I do think this has the potential to massively swing. It's a big one for either side, isn't it? And it's one of them where you think, well, it's not a must win. I think it is more, and it's a massive cliche, it's a bit more must not lose. That's not how you want to go into it. You want to go into it as a team thinking you're going to win it. Absolutely. Do not go in looking for a draw. But what you don't want to do is lose. Find yourself Rotherham pulled away from you, and we're right in the mire. Because it's really difficult to get out of there once and even if you draw a game, you can spin it, can't you? That's 2 games unbeaten. We go into, there's a feeling of a kind of forward motion. Whereas I think if we lose to Rotherham, it's going to feel very much like 1 step forward, 2 back, isn't it? That's, you're right in the shit there, aren't you? Really?
Yeah.
And it's a difficult place to get out of, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so no, it's not too early. It's massive.
Yeah.
No, I mean I don't disagree, and we certainly saw it last season where under our various managers, probably before Neil, but you think, well, if you can't beat no disrespect to Rotherham, but if you can't beat Rotherham at home with the away record that they have, then who can you beat? It's one of them, isn't it? And we saw that a lot last season. So yeah, I think I completely agree with you, Sarah. I think it's a must not lose rather than a must win. Tom, is it agreement all around?
I think this kind of comes into one thing that we have touched on before. The problem town is, what is it? It's one of my favourite stats. I think Pozza said on the main pod was Town have been involved in the last 20 years. I think 3 seasons we've not been involved in either playoff promotion chase or a relegation battle, and it's almost like I think it's the mentality. I'd like to think that they're going out to win this game on Saturday. I mean, I'm pretty sure Neil Warnock, every game he's going out to win. But I think if you're turning up and thinking, as long as we don't lose to them, then you're almost resigning to the fact, oh, we're going to be in a relegation battle this season. Do you know what I mean? Because I get that, Sarah, that kind of, because I've always thought, as long as you don't lose teams in and around you, then they've not gained anything on you. But like, it's too early to be like saying that. We need to be thinking, they need to be in that dressing room like, right, let's go out, let's get this charge on. Look, we're on 4 points already. Pick up a couple of wins now. You get halfway up the table early on. So 6 pointer, maybe not, but it probably is a must win. Yeah. Because
I do think, like you say,
if we lose, we're right in it.
I think it's that mentality thing of do we as a club accept that this is going to be a relegation battle of a season? And I think most of us probably think it is going to be. But let's hope they don't think that. Let's hope that in that dressing room they don't think, here we go again, as another season of a relegation battle. And right now they shouldn't. They should feel like that mid-table isn't far away. And, you know, as ridiculous as it was that we were in a playoff final 2 seasons ago when we were nowhere near good enough to be there, we were still there. You know, we can't. 2 years later, we shouldn't be going into a season going, well, of course we're going to be in a relegation battle. You know, there should be some hope there and some remaining part of that team and that sort of, you know, that did what it did against all the odds and against any sort of real semblance of logic, that we got anywhere close. You know, 2 years later, we shouldn't be resigning ourselves, or 18 months later even, shouldn't be resigning ourselves to kind of, oh yeah, here we go, another season of relegation battle. Let's hope that they've got more belief than I think probably most Town fans do have, which is, you know, I think most Town fans do think, here we go again, but let's hope that they believe something better and bigger, and that we can settle nicely into 15th and stay there, and we'll all enjoy it for once.
I'd love that this year.
I really like that, Sarah. That was really galvanised, and then it was just like, and let's settle in 15th.
Oh, you got a touch of realism. Let's really go for it. Let's go into lower mid-table. Stay there.
Do you know what, lads? If you work really hard, we might get 14th.
Hey, whoa.
I know. I think we'll leave it there. But yeah, it is a must win. We think, or certainly a must not lose, and we will see what the result is on Saturday. But I just want to say thanks to Tom and Sarah for joining me. Thank you to you, listener, for tuning in, and thank to Magic Rock for sponsoring this podcast as always. Tom and I will be back to preview the next game, and we'll leave you there to ta for now and up the town.